Free agent frenzy is underway, and it just got madder. Not only is Mad Max no longer a Raven, but Trey Hendrickson is. We'll break it down, talk all about it. Matt Lombardo is going to join us, our NFL insider. It's the Manchild Show with Boy Green Digital live, and we start right now.
Let's go! It's time for the talk to you. 'Cause when it's born, it's all we're gonna do. And Boy Green is always on the scene. And what you're always bring to life, so get ready. Get ready, 'cause here they come.
All right, welcome aboard, everybody. Happy Wednesday. It is our Wednesday live show, the Manchild Show with Boy Green Digital, covering all things New York football. Syracuse basketball, by the way, also one of the many things we cover, and their head coach, Adrian Autry, was let go this morning after another loss. I think their fifth or sixth in a row here, and this one in the ACC tournament. Syracuse goes down to SMU badly, and Autry was let go this morning. So Syracuse will be searching for a new basketball coach. That all to come later. We'll be talking with Bud Poliquin today, so we'll break that all down. We've got a lot of great interviews scheduled for the week. But today it is time to talk live football. And wow, breaking news this morning. We already knew about the Maxx Crosby situation, but very, very quickly do the Ravens pivot, and they go out and get Trey Hendrickson. By the way, today's video brought to you by our friends at Northeast Roofing Professionals, our presenting sponsor. Boy Green, good morning. What are your thoughts about free agent madness, which, by the way, still will not be official for any team out there until 4 o'clock today?
That's correct. And you see the jersey over my shoulder. It's been hanging up there for a few days. In anticipation, I thought it was possible. And Geno Smith is a Jet. A party like it's 2013 again, Jet fan. So there's a lot to get into. But, yeah, I want some answers from Matt Lombardo, our NFL insider extraordinaire, because I'm smelling some BS coming from the Baltimore Ravens, claiming medical, physical things when they knew he had surgery. To me, it sounds like a lot of, and we could say this on the internet, a lot of bullshit. It sounds like is what I'm sensing.
Really? You smelling something, huh?
I am. I will see if it's the truth. I don't know. Matt Lombardo is the one with all the answers. But first, we can't just randomly bring him on the show, Lurch. We need a proper introduction.
We do? You got something in mind? You're talking about my little thing here.
I am.
Yes. So, Matt, in honor of you and in order to, I'm a former TV guy. Now, I've been out of TV for a long time, but nonetheless, I still have that television background. And sometimes, the visual makes it stick. So now every time we introduce you, I will throw this up in the scrolling ticker. Joining us now from between the hash marks on Substack, it is the one, the only Mr. Matt Lombardo. All right, you can bring him in now, Boy Green. Okay, Matt, good morning. How are you?
Hey, boys. Great to nail the intro. And Manchild, I hope you're enjoying the subscription. We hooked you up. So it's no longer between the ferns, between the taglines, between the pencil marks. We know what it is, and hopefully you're enjoying the content so far.
Yeah. Hey, Matt, thank you, by the way. I want to thank you for giving me a free subscription. I appreciate that very much. And I've been browsing, dare I say, a little bit. But just a little heads up. It landed in my junk email, and I didn't know about it until probably 4 or 5 days after you sent it to me. And then I just happened to have one of those, like maybe once a month I go through my junk email and just make sure there's nothing in there that's important. And then all of a sudden I'm like, Matt Lombardo, wait, what's going on here? And then I was like, is that between the hash marks? Did I get an email from between the hash marks? And then sure enough, it was there. I've now rectified that situation and cleared you to enter my inbox at all times, Matt. So you should be fine going forward. But just a little heads up that I could have come today and be like, what? You didn't send me anything. What's going on? Randomly was going through my junk email. So be aware out there, folks. Things can land in your junk email that you don't want to land there.
Which, again, what I do want to appreciate, speaking of between the hash marks real quick, it just landed on our lap right minutes before in impressive timing from one Matt Lombardo, who on top of being an NFL insider extraordinaire is a juggler, apparently. I saw some fresh content dropping between the hash marks here, Matt Lombardo, right before you hopped on here. Please.
We tried to time it out with appearing on this show. The biggest value signings of the legal tampering period, because obviously when you see $1 billion worth of new contracts being signed across the league, and Kenneth Walker going to Kansas City, and Alec Pierce staying in Indianapolis, and some of the bigger moves, some small moves got lost in the shuffle during the legal tampering period that I think could make a big impact. There's a Jets signing in there. There's an Eagles addition, their first edition of free agency in there. And I think that what the Commanders did pretty sneakily could make a pretty big impact on the NFC East with two signings they made over the first 2 days of legal tampering. But guys, we got to start with this Maxx Crosby chaos, right? Because I can't remember, sure, trades have been nullified by a failed physical before, but I don't ever remember one with this timing, with so many moves that were made in conjunction with that trade based on cap space and how many players were lost from one team going to others. It was a whole mess last night, wasn't it?
It was. Can we go to this level first? Because the piece, and I'm going to throw this on the screen. This is what the Raiders officially tweeted out. So I hear the ba-ding, and then this message comes across. The Baltimore Ravens have backed out of our trade agreement for Maxx Crosby. We have no further comment at this time. Now, again, you just said it, Matt. I've heard of course, it's the T's crossed and the I's dotted. A physical has to happen. They fail the physical. Sorry, pal. The trade's over. So, or signing or anything. And I get that. We've seen that story before. When I saw this wording, backed out of the trade, to me doesn't scream failed physical. That screams to me some extracurricular activities happening here. And then we get the leaks. Oh, no. It was a failed physical. But we all knew that Maxx Crosby got knee surgery. So how could he possibly pass a physical? He still has months of recovery time. So, Matt, what the hell is going on here, man?
Yeah, I had a really similar reaction to you, that when you see this type of a statement come out from the Raiders at like 9:30 at night, you automatically go through your head, okay, did the Ravens get cold feet? Did they get buyer's remorse, giving up 2 first-round picks for Maxx Crosby with Trey Hendrickson still out there? Obviously, you look at the cap space that the Raiders still had to operate with. This wasn't like completely detrimental to what Las Vegas wound up doing. They can still agree to those contracts. But when you first see it, you start thinking to yourself, oh my God, how much does this change everything for Las Vegas? The Linderbaum deal, the Quay Walker deal, and the Kobe Dean deal, all of these contracts that they signed that look really good on paper, they're going to have to redo those deals. Are those guys going to sign elsewhere? Is Linderbaum going to go back to Baltimore? But what I think really, really smells about all of this is that the Ravens, like you said, they knew about the meniscus injury. They knew, everybody in the league knew about the full repair versus just the scope of the meniscus that happened in this surgery this offseason. And they backed out of the trade anyway. So now not only does Crosby go back against the cap for the Raiders, not only does he go back to Las Vegas, where he seems like he has no interest in playing another down for, but the Raiders have to now try to trade Maxx Crosby with 31 other teams having this failed physical hanging over the entire situation. Now, of course, the Eagles, if they trade for Hendrickson, they could, run their own physical. Any team that trades for Crosby could run their own physical. But then this morning we wake up to Trey Hendrickson, who's also injured, coming off playing, I believe, 6 games last year, a more severe injury from the core muscle surgery he had to undergo. He signs in Baltimore, and the Ravens get their first-round picks back. The deal is a little bit less against the cap than what they would have had to commit to Crosby. Just all of this smells like, at minimum, the league needs to investigate what the hell just happened here.
Yeah, I definitely think they should investigate, but almost all morning long, I was listening to Adam Schefter, who was on television quite a bit talking about this. I don't think Schefter's slept in 3 days. Maybe that's part of the problem too. He looked like he had bags under his eyes, but he supposedly talked with actually the doctors who did this exam. One of them is this renowned doctor who actually is the doctor for the Dallas Cowboys. Okay, so he's a renowned surgeon, and he was in on this evaluation. And we saw a report immediately, gentlemen, that the Cowboys are out. They're not in on Maxx Crosby, like almost immediately. So it does lend some credence, dare I say, to the fact that maybe there is more going on here with Crosby than meets the eye in terms of, as Schefter described it, what the doctors and then inevitably the teams saw through the doctors' eyes. And there were several doctors who put eyes apparently on this exam and the pictures, the x-rays, whatever they took, okay, saying things along the lines of that they're just not comfortable with the way this looks, that there may be long-term implications, even though it is expected that Crosby should be able to make it back for the regular season, maybe and even an outside chance that he could be back for part of training camp. So, but the Raiders are offering their perspective, and this does seem a little fishy, and I do definitely think it warrants an investigation by the NFL, because you can't have this kind of impropriety going on in the NFL, even though it's not official to 4 o'clock, people just backing out because they have, buyer's remorse. I mean, you can't have that kind of stuff going on in the league. So for that reason and that reason alone, the NFL needs to take a close look at it. Go ahead, Matt. I'll comment on that.
I just want to throw this nugget in because Tom Pelissero shared this morning, that while everything we just said, that it looks incredibly sketchy and to give a pile of money to another pass rusher where you get to keep your first round picks after he leaves. Again, there's a stench there. Tom Pelissero says there is no recourse here. The NFL, the Raiders, who are upset, I'm sure, and the NFL, because this looks really bad, that there's nothing they could do. That in the fine print of everything is every team has their own group of doctors, and it's up to their sole discretion whether to allow a physical to pass or allow a physical to fail. And Tom Pelissero explained that each team doctor has their own tolerance, that someone can pass for the Raiders but could pass for or not pass for the Ravens, and thus that there is nothing to be done here. There's no punishment or something that can, at this point, unless new information is presented, that there is no punishment or anything that's coming of this. It's just now we're dealing with the ripple effects here, Matt.
Yeah, I think that what kind of makes this a little bit different from a perception standpoint is the timing of it, right? Because if let's say that the Raiders traded Maxx Crosby to the Ravens at the trade deadline last fall, and he failed the physical at that point, and that's when they discovered the injury. Okay, no muss, no fuss. The trade ends. Maxx Crosby goes back to the Raiders roster against their cap. He gets their surgery. He gets what he needs to do. The fact that this came during the legal tampering period, how much does every team across the league, or at least every pass rush needy team, operate differently had they known Maxx Crosby was actually going to be available via trade? Because remember, this went down on Saturday morning. We woke up to this news late Friday night, early Saturday morning. So the knowledge of 30 teams around the league is that Maxx Crosby is going to be a Raven. So the Panthers, they throw $80 million guaranteed at Jalen Phillips. Odafe Owe goes to the Commanders. The Eagles are still searching for a pass rusher. How much differently do all of these teams operate had they known that Maxx Crosby could be available to be had via trade? What deals get signed, which ones don't? And from the Ravens standpoint, obviously this is kind of, separating the baby and the bathwater. But if they knew that they weren't actually trading for Maxx Crosby, do they go and they sign Tyler Linderbaum? Do they pay the premium to keep Isaiah Likely? Does Jordan Stout, who's as field flipping a weapon as a punter as you have in this league, does he go to the Giants? Do they operate differently, knowing that their cap space situation is going to be different? I just think the timing of all this is what kind of makes it the bigger story than maybe it is, going to your point of teams and players fail physicals all the time.
Let me just throw one more log on the fire, because I was listening, I think it was the Get Up show this morning on ESPN, where they were hashing a lot of this out. And one of the things that came up was really fascinating to me, and I did not know this, if indeed what they said was true. Basically, they were saying, well, now that this has all gone down, right? And now Crosby is, at least for the moment, stuck back with the Raiders and back on their payroll, so to speak. The Ravens, who now, and this was before, this was actually, I think, in between when before they got Hendrickson. All right. But regardless, that the Ravens could now throw a bunch of money or another offer, dare I say, at Tyler Linderbaum and try to lure him back, because, again, that 4 o'clock thing hasn't happened yet. So the Raiders, who suddenly have now a new burden on their payroll, and Maxx Crosby, who they thought was off their payroll, is now back on. And now they could throw some thoughts at Linderbaum and be like, hey, you don't have to leave, buddy. You got till 4 o'clock. Here's a really juicy offer. Come on back to mama. I mean, that can go on. That is crazy to me, Matt. The stuff like that can go on. And you can literally continue to toss offers at guys who have already agreed to take an offer because it's not official until 4 o'clock today. That's crazy to me. Wow.
Yeah. And that just speaks to the timing of this being so wild and almost unprecedented because it's before those contracts become binding. And you look at over the cap right now as we're having this conversation, and they currently have $58 million in cap space. Now, that's before whatever the breakdown is of the Trey Hendrickson contract that they just signed. But the Ravens are certainly far better positioned to make a run at Linderbaum, to make a run at Isaiah Likely, to try and, mend the fences over the next 5 hours or so to bring back some of the players they might have lost. It's a completely different pivot for them. And if you're the Raiders, I got to be a little bit extra annoyed because I structured these contracts knowing that I had something like $250 million in cap space next offseason. Now that cap space is gone until I can offload Crosby, which just became a lot more difficult to do because of however the Ravens viewed this physical. Now, there's a very real chance that the knee isn't recovered to the point that maybe a lot of teams expected. Maybe it is worse coming off the surgery than what was let known, and the Ravens flagged this because they're not comfortable with it. That's all fine and that's all well and good. Yeah. But it just feels like they're using potentially the cover of a failed physical to get out of trading 2 first-round picks and letting Tyler Linderbaum and others walk out the door. And I think that perception – That's a PR nightmare for that franchise. And it's also a nightmare for dealing with 31 other teams in trade talks moving forward from here in the future.
Yeah, that's what I was going to kind of vamp on, Matt, is the fact that, okay, so Crosby's back with the Raiders. The Ravens, I don't think they're in any legal hot water. I really don't. This is just part of the way this system is set up. I mean, even if the NFL were to investigate this and look at this, they're not going to penalize the Ravens. What they could do, though, is maybe change the system in terms of how you can go about this from a physical standpoint. Do you create an independent team of doctors, that looks at everybody this way? One team can't just say, well, my doctor said this, and another team will say, well, my doctor said this. There's an independent team that evaluates and gives a fair evaluation, and then you just look at that data and you make a decision. And if the data doesn't look weird, then you can't back out of a deal. Then there's some collusion going on here. There's just some nefarious stuff going on. But here's the sad part about it from the Raiders' standpoint. They probably now won't get 2 number 1 picks. I mean, I just think now that this cork is back in the bottle, I don't think they're going to be able to get. So they may still be able to offload Crosby. He's a heck of a player. There have got to be teams out there in the NFL that would want to take a swing at Maxx Crosby, but probably not now for 2 first-round picks. That's where I think the Raiders really got screwed here.
And I'm going to throw this out here. I'm going to throw this out real quick. We don't mean to step on you.
No.
I would not be surprised, and I think there's a non-zero chance that Howie Roseman picks up the phone, calls John Spytek, and you see some sort of pick swap involved in an A.J. Brown for Maxx Crosby trade. Because the Eagles are looking to upgrade their pass rush. The Raiders could be adding a dynamic field stretching number 1 wide receiver for Fernando Mendoza with Brock Bowers, with Ashton Genty, with Linderbaum, presuming that they sign him. That's the kind of move that jumpstarts your offense pretty significantly, pretty quickly here. I don't know that it's going to happen, but I think that's a conversation that's going to be had given the fact that the Eagles haven't spent big money in free agency, given the fact that they didn't spend the big money on a Jalen Phillips contract extension, and given that the Raiders seem to be positioning themselves after shoring up their defense with the 2 linebacker signings and Linderbaum on offense to be trying to set themselves up for have a turnkey offense ready for Mendoza when he lands as the number 1 pick.
Yeah, and Matt, I think that's just the pressing question on everyone's minds now is what's next? Because I heard it was reported that Maxx Crosby was at the Raiders facility at 6 a.m. this morning getting workouts in and doing it. Of course he is. And there's been some word from the Raiders, oh, yeah, we'll totally, we'll keep Maxx Crosby. Screw the trade. We just got a superstar pass rusher back on top of everything else we did. So we're just going to have Maxx Crosby. Is that real? Is that just leverage? Of course, you have to say that because you want to try to maximize the value you can get. And then to Lurch's point and what you just answered, what is leverage now? Because a lot of these teams that were in, I saw this from Jeremy Fowler. Do I still have it up? That is, yes. Here are the 5 teams that were in on a bunch of these guys: Eagles, Colts, Bills, Bucks, Commanders. There's a lot of these teams that are in the mix, both in Trey Hendrickson and potentially in Maxx Crosby. Like, a lot of these teams have spent their money, so they don't have the money sitting around to just pay a $30 million charge for Maxx Crosby. The paint is dry. Like, they made big boy decisions because they're like, oh geez, Maxx Crosby is off the board. Oh, just kidding, he's now back on the board. So, like, where do we go from here? Do the Raiders keep him? Is there a real world? What kind of bizarro? Yeah, we traded you. Just kidding, you're back. And then life is just the same as he's walking around the Raiders building. Yeah, sorry, buddy, you are just now a Raider. Or are things awkward now because of that trade and he has to be moved? What happens?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to 2 things. One, I do believe the Raiders when they say that they would like to keep Maxx Crosby. Okay. Who wouldn't? Especially when you have the kind of draft assets that they have, the kind of cap space that they have still this year and next with Crosby on the roster. You just don't want to give that kind of talent away. But Crosby not wanting to be there is the big elephant in the room. And he's made it abundantly clear throughout this offseason that he wants out, that he wants the chance to go chase a ring. I do think that the Buffalo Bills would still be in the mix there. I still think that they could find a way to finagle a contract extension to make it work long term. I know that the dollars at this point are really unfavorable, but you could rework the deal to make it work. Tampa Bay makes a lot of sense. They desperately need a pass rusher. They haven't done much to add in that department. And, I know that they just signed K'Lavon Chaisson as one of the better value moves in free agency. But if you're the Washington Commanders and you can sense the Eagles kind of sniffing their way around, you still have $80 million in cap space this year. Of course, you're picking up the phone and calling to try and add him into that division, into your front 7. So I don't think it's 2 first-round picks, but I think that even with what just transpired over the last 12 hours or so, that if you're the Raiders and you can get a number 1 and a number 2, or a number 2 and a number 3 over the next 2 years, I think you at least have to entertain those offers based on you putting this plan together without Maxx Crosby, with all of the cap space next year to keep building, that if you can get assets for him, I think you still strike while the iron's hot, even lukewarm.
Hey, breaking news.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Seconds ago, the Indianapolis Colts and Daniel Jones have agreed to a 2-year, $88 million extension that could be worth up to $100 million, according to NFL insider Jordan Schultz. He gets $50 million in the first year, and it's the largest 2-year contract in NFL history. Both sides wanted to get this done, and it officially makes Indiana Jones the franchise quarterback for the Colts. I want your immediate thoughts on this, Matt, but I just want to come out and say personally, Colts, I apologize, because last week I thought the Colts messed everything up by transition tagging Daniel Jones, which opened the door for him to get stolen. Alec Pierce hitting the open market, the crazy money he was set to get. I said, oh boy, Colts, what the hell are you doing over there, man? This is a disaster. And somehow, some way, they have locked in both pieces. Okay. They were able to pull it off. Daniel Jones is locked in. Obviously, Alec Pierce is locked in on record-breaking money. So, hey, my beat, as the kids say. Matt Lombardo, give us the latest here. Wow, the largest extension for a player in NFL history over a 2-year span here. He gets signed. Alec Pierce gets signed. Wow, huge win for the Colts.
And the other domino here is we reported about 3 weeks ago that had the Colts been able to keep Alec Pierce on the long-term deal, an executive told me that the likelihood was they would be trading Michael Pittman, which they did, flipping him to the Steelers to get an asset there. So really nimble offseason so far by Chris Ballard and the Colts. And if you're Indianapolis, this is a move that you had to make, right? Regardless of the injury and the uncertain timeline of a Daniel Jones return from the Achilles injury, regardless of what you saw in the 2 or 3 games leading up to him getting injured in Jacksonville, you don't have a first-round pick over either of the next 2 drafts. So you had to get some sort of veteran quarterback in place. They're clearly not comfortable or confident in Anthony Richardson's future. So you bring back Daniel Jones, who showed you a lot of promise early in the season. You keep Alec Pierce. You keep Jonathan Taylor. You still have Tyler Warren. You still have a pretty good offensive line. And in a division that's largely wide open other than the defense down in Houston, when Daniel Jones gets healthy, he showed what he could do in Shane Steichen's system. This is a move where you have some stability over the next 2 years to figure it out. And then, by the way, what happens in year 3? You have a first-round pick again. So if it doesn't work out, you can go and draft your quarterback, or you can reopen the negotiations with Daniel Jones in 2028. So, yeah, I like this for the Colts. I like the way they handled it. And for them, you kind of say mission accomplished as far as what you were setting out to do this offseason, right?
Amazing. Daniel Jones getting that kind of money. Oh, boy. That's Giant fans.
I thought the Colts were up against it, right? They make that crazy trade with the Jets, 2 firsts for Sauce Gardner. They go all in on him. I know that Daniel Jones' Achilles eventually explodes, but you're pot committed. You're in. It's too late. You don't have the first-round picks to go get your own quarterback anymore. So you've bought into this window. You're Chris Ballard. You're Shane Steichen. You're like, well, this is our only choice, so we're in. So, the 2-year deal, right, largest in NFL history, seems a little excessive perhaps for Daniel Jones, but geez, what other choice do they have? So to me,
I think here's the other one. You saw the report in the last couple of days that Daniel Jones was looking for $50 million a season. So you got out of paying that kind of a premium. So it's a lot of money, but it's not quite worst case scenario.
Yeah. Matt, wow. I'll tell you what, I'm just going on the record and saying this. I think they grossly overpaid Pierce, who to me has not shown enough to get that kind of money. And I think they are grossly overpaying Jones, who has not shown anything other than a little more than a half a season with a team and a system that he might be functional and able to do that. And by the way, he did do that for one season under Brian Dable with the Giants and even won a playoff game. But it doesn't make him a franchise quarterback or a franchise quarterback who gets paid that kind of crazy money. So I'm on the record, and it's not being, jealous Giant guy because Daniel Jones is over there. I wish him well. I think he's an earnest guy and a good guy. I think he gave us a nice effort. I just don't think he's that talented. So we'll see how talented.
So what's the backup plan if not Daniel Jones? What's the backup?
That's the problem. That's why Boy Green put it, hit the nail on the head. That's why they had to do it. Just like, well, let's talk about the Jets. I want to shift over there. I really do. And I haven't heard from my colleague yet on this signing of Geno Smith. I did text him yesterday when it broke in between classes that I was teaching as a college professor. And I was like, Geno, gross, was my exact text to Paul yesterday. Listen, 3 seasons ago, okay, Geno Smith had turned his career around and had become a terrific quarterback. And I won't deny it. His numbers say it. Seattle had him humming, and I was, to be honest with you, as a football fan, bravo for this guy, that he stuck around as a backup, that he stayed the course, that he continued to work on his game, and he got with the right coach and the right system with the right players and turned his career around. Bravo to Geno. Happy as heck for the guy. The last 2 seasons, and I know the Raiders stink, okay? And they didn't have an offensive line, didn't really have much of a running game. They tried last year to bring in Genti. But the fact of the matter is he's thrown more interceptions than any quarterback in football in the last 2 years. The one thing you could say is his completion percentage has still been good the last 2 seasons. That's the only redeeming stat I could find. Because other than that, he has not been good. So I don't know how my colleague over here could be happy about Geno Smith being the number 1 quarterback and looking like the A option for the Jets this season. Now, again, they don't have a lot of choices either, and we can get into that. But, Matt, let me get your reaction. Does Geno still have anything left in the tank? Is Geno the best possible selection for the Jets given the circumstances?
I have a take, but first of all, that signing went down about 47 seconds after Mike Tanier and I wrapped up our podcast yesterday. So I got a text message from Mike. Can you read what it says there? Geno Jets. And what did I say?
Geno Jets. You say that was so damn much fun. Yeah, gross on Geno. It's the same reaction.
Excuse me, gross. Oh God, same thing.
Same exact reaction. Because here's the thing, right? Boy Green, you know this better than anybody. How many times have I come on your Sunday show dating back to friggin' October And I talked about all of the cap space and all of the draft picks, right? And how much I was so optimistic about Darren Moogie and the Jets and this whole offseason that they could turn it around quickly, that the Commanders did it in an offseason, the Patriots did it in an offseason. I'm just so overwhelmed by almost all of it. And the fact that they couldn't get Malik Willis, that felt like the domino that tipped them from, okay, we're going to spend like crazy, like bandits to turn this around quickly this year with Malik Willis, who's the best quarterback on the market. We can run a run-heavy offense with Breece Hall and do what Malik Willis does best. We'll build up some pieces around him so that next year we can take off or draft a rookie if it doesn't pan out. To now, after losing on Malik Willis, losing on Fernando Mendoza, you have to go down the other path. And the other path is almost just like fielding a team to get by.
Yeah.
This feels like 2026 is now the get-by year to Arch Manning and the cap space and the 3 first-round picks that you have next year. That there were, I know, Boy Green, you know this. There's this faction of Jets fans that have been, screaming for them to tank this year for whatever reason. I didn't think tanking was necessary. Geno Smith is the only move when you look around the very limited quarterback market, other than trading for Mac Jones or, a 4th-round pick for J.J. McCarthy on a rookie contract.
Like
Geno Smith was the only real move.
I thought Brissett would have been an option, Matt, just to jump in a second, but he's not an option anymore. I think that they've made and he's going to stay. He's Geno Smith. Geno Smith and Jacoby Brissett are the same quarterback to me. It just feels like this is the placeholder quarterback for the placeholder year. And unfortunately, after losing out on Malik Willis, it's probably the best that they could have done. Wow. Are you happy about it, BG? I mean, let's get your raw reaction. Now, when you texted me back yesterday, you offered a sarcastic in text, so I can't read your emotion in a text, and I did not catch any of your show this morning. So are you actually painting this as a positive or not? Where you stand on this?
First off, I need to ask, so your text, you said your text, and that was true. Mm-hmm. Something I want to know real quick before I give my response.
Yeah.
Did you send that text after you heard of the trade?
Yeah.
Okay. So I didn't know that a trade had happened when you texted me that.
Oh, wow.
I had heard rumors. So when you texted me, I said, because and now all the days are blending together. The night before you sent me that text, Zach Roseblatt said, by all signs, Geno is going to sign with the Jets at 4:01 today.
Yep. So
on Wednesday. So all the rumors said it's happening, but I didn't know via trade. So when you sent me the text, I went, we're exchanging as if I feel like you're talking about him eventually signing with the Jets. And then all of a sudden, so you sent me that, and then my phone started blowing up, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And then I hear Geno trade, and I'm like, what? I'm like, oh my God, that's what Lurch was saying. And I assumed. So I saw that. Before I go on this long diatribe, Matt, do we have to let you go here with the time?
I have a window of like 10, 15 more minutes, whatever you guys need. I'm all yours.
I just wanted to make sure, I want to keep you between the hash marks of your time. I don't want to go beyond that, but if you have the window, okay. Here's my thing on Geno. Let's say something right off the top rope. Obviously, the options were terrible this offseason. Free agency, trade. The Jets have the number 2 pick in a draft that appears to only have one quality quarterback. So put all of that, dump all that on the table. Now, is Lurch correct that the last 2 years he has thrown more picks than anyone? It is true. Yes. Last year he led the league in picks. He had 17 picks. The year before he had 15 picks. But this painting that he's just been terrible is absolutely, unequivocally false. Last year, he was awful. The Raiders were awful. They suck. They have the number 1 overall pick. Of course, they're terrible. But apparently, Chip Kelly there was a report from Tom Pelissero, the Rich Eisen show, that he would call plays in a game that the huddle goes back and say, what play is that? And he was calling random plays that weren't even a part of the play sheet. So there was all kinds of apparent, unbelievable levels of dysfunction happening there that apparently had nothing to do with Geno. So put that Geno, window in its own pocket here. And then let's look at what Lurch said. So
but since can I just jump in for a second?
Go ahead. Sure.
For 2 seasons, he doesn't bear any of the blame for
No.
Team winning
That's
very
not what
few
I'm saying.
games. I mean, you're
That's
trying to, you want to win
not win
games.
any games. Lurch, I don't know if you remember this. 2024, he played for the Seahawks. They won 10 games.
Yeah. Is he only
He's
been
only
one
played
season?
1 year with the Raiders.
Oh,
Yeah, he got traded there
with
last
the Raiders.
year.
Okay. I thought
Yeah,
for some
so
reason it was 2 years. You're right. It was 1 year. Yes, you're right. You're
Of
correct.
course I'm right. I'm always right. I'm never wrong.
Continue your thought. I'm sorry. I
Anyway.
ruined your stream of consciousness.
You did, but that's all right. No, but that's what I wanted to say. It was one bad year with the Raiders. He
Right.
got traded last year, and the whole thing is the year the Seahawks trade him away, they replaced him with Sam Darnold, immediately win the Super Bowl. So that's like a slam dunk on Geno. So no, he was only with the Raiders for 1 year. It was last year, and I admit it was terrible, but a lot was terrible with the Raiders. The year before that you bring up, he did throw a lot of picks with Seattle in his final year.
Yes,
he also had a 71% completion percentage and threw 4,300 yards. Lurch, do you know how many quarterbacks have thrown for 4,300 yards in Jets franchise history?
It's probably 0.
It is 0.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, only one quarterback has thrown for over 4,000 yards in Jets franchise history. It was 1967, Joe Namath, when he did it for the first time in NFL history. No quarterback before Joe Namath in 1967 have ever thrown for 4,000 yards. He did it and went, wow, this 4,000-yard thing seems like a cool thing. And it's never happened since. Jets have never had a 4,000-yard guy. So for this guy that you just say, in the last 2 years, he sucks. 4,300 yards and a 71% completion percentage to me doesn't suck. And I'll bring up this statistic. Okay. So Geno Smith has been a full-time starting quarterback again since 2022. So 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. He's had 4 seasons. Again, I'm admitting, obviously, that last year was terrible. So let's highlight the 3-year sample size from 2022 to 2024 before he became a Raider. Here are just some interesting statistics I'm going to throw out there. This is league-wide. This is among all quarterbacks over that 3-year sample size. Geno Smith had the 4th most passing yards of any of those quarterbacks. He had the 8th most passing touchdowns of any of those quarterbacks. He had the 3rd best completion percentage of any of those quarterbacks. And he was first in lowest percentage of off-target throws at 7%. That's just a fancy way of saying he's really accurate. So Geno Smith was a top 10 quarterback for 3 years in a row, and then he goes to the Raiders and sucks, and everyone says, what a terrible move. LOL Jets. I get it. Geno, the broken jaw with the Jets, there's all these jokes. They bring him back. But the statistics paint a very different picture than the jokes that everyone are getting off, and that's fine. We have your jokes now in March, and I think the Jets just dramatically improved their quarterback situation. Geno Smith, after the trade got announced, he did a wonderful 30-minute sit-down with Josina Anderson, and he talked about the chip on his shoulder and why he chose the Jets and says, this is a movie script. I get to go back to the place, and I get to right my wrongs, the parts of my career that I weren't as successful as I wanted. He says, of course, like any quarterback, when I got drafted by the Jets, I wanted to be with the Jets for 20 years and then retire. I didn't want to go anywhere else, but other circumstances played a part. So what's my take on Geno Smith? I think he was one of the best quarterbacks that could have possibly acquired. Now, that may be less of a compliment to Geno and more an insult to who else was the choices, but that's still the fact. And they're getting him for $3.3 million. How many? If I pulled up the highest paid quarterbacks in football and found where Geno Smith's $3.3 million annual salary ranks, it's probably 28th. So now the Jets can use all their cap space to build the team around Geno. We've already established there's no clear number 1 superstar quarterback that was available this offseason. So if you can't get that, get someone cheap who's going to bring respectability, who's been really good. He throws picks. He also throws touchdown passes. The last, here are the touchdown passes over the last 4 years. 30 touchdowns, 20 touchdowns, 21 touchdowns, 19 touchdowns. The Jets haven't had a quarterback throw for over 10 touchdown passes, only once with Aaron Rodgers over the last 5 years. So we all are fans of football, but like the Jets are playing a different sport than the one you guys are all enjoying, where they're not throwing 10 touchdown passes in a friggin' season. And you're telling me Geno Smith sucks? No, I'll tell you what sucks. I watch the Jets every freaking year, man. So my team stinks. And Geno Smith is going to raise the floor of the offense. That's what I've been begging for months. Frank Reich raises the floor of the Jets offense. Geno Smith raises the floor of the Jets offense. What's the ceiling? We're all going to find out together. I have no idea what the ceiling is for a 35-year-old Geno Smith, but I know where the floor is, and the floor has been a bottom 5, 32nd, 31st ranked offense for 14 of the last 15 years. Yeah, I'll take a little bit of a change here with Geno Smith. I think Geno Smith dramatically improves with the Jets have at quarterback. And I am titillated by Geno Smith. I'm titillated by his story. What a comeback story. He could come to the Jets and right the wrongs and take us to the playoffs.
I'll tell you.
Yeah, I
before
get
you
it.
jump in, Matt, I'm going to let you jump in and have at it here, Matt. But just a couple of quickies to just respond to him. Number one, I want to make this note, and I think I'm right about this. You correct me if I'm wrong, Paul. I heard that the Jets gave him an extra $1 million in the trade, as part of his salary. So it would have been 2.3, and now he's getting 3.3. The Jets gave him $1 million raise. That's so they see some value in him, but they are getting him brutally on the cheap. And we talked about that with Kyler Murray and several of the other candidates, that the Jets could get some guys potentially really on the cheap. So this is not a high risk in terms of cap money and all the stuff that you have to worry about financially. So that's a definite. The other thing that I would offer is, I don't know. You know me, and I'm staying true to personality and true to form here. I certainly look at stats and I value stats, and I quoted some of them there. The most interceptions in the last 2 years in the league, the lack of wins last year with the Raiders. I think maybe there's one thing to think about if this doesn't go well. Geno was able to get the Raiders to the number 1 pick. Maybe he can get the Jets to the number 1 pick next year. Matt, give me your thoughts. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know that I disagree with anything that Paul said there, and especially in the backdrop of an offseason where the quarterback landscape was as barren as it was. Just look at Malik Willis being the prize of free agency with such a limited sample size. But you talk about raising the floor, and that's fine. I think you also built a ceiling on him, where is a late round pick swap and bringing Geno Smith back, does it give you a higher ceiling than trading a 3rd round pick, say, for Tyson Bagent in Chicago, who a lot of guys inside the league think is an ascending young player that you could get a look at really on the cheap before going into next year? Is signing Geno Smith on a late round pick swap better than trading the Eagles 4th round pick for Tanner McKee, who might have the ceiling of being a franchise quarterback? Is it a higher ceiling move than trading a 4th or 5th round pick for JJ McCarthy, a former 1st round pick on a rookie deal? If the object is raising the floor, and the vision is let's revisit quarterback in 2027 in a deeper class where we're going to be picking honestly near the top of the board. And if we're not, we have 3 first-round picks that we can throw all of the 3 first-round picks at this problem. The Geno Smith signing is fine. It just doesn't move the ball for me in an offseason where I thought the Jets had the ammunition from cap space and draft capital to advance the ball forward from here. They didn't even, in my opinion, really try to move the ball forward. Because if McKee or McCarthy or any of these other Bagent or Kyler Murray, former 1st-round pick, if any of these guys work out, you've solved that problem with 3 first-round picks to build around him next year. I don't think at this stage of his career, Geno Smith is the quarterback that you build around. For 1 year, he raises the floor. Yep. He makes it easier to evaluate everything else, but you've already evaluated Breece Hall. You've already evaluated Garrett Wilson. I think that it's a great stopgap move. It's the best veteran move they could have made. I just hope to advance the ball forward, and I just don't think that they tried to do that here.
And just a quick correction to what Lurch was saying earlier, just, the trade and how everything works. So Geno Smith, if he was to be released by the Raiders, could have signed with any team at 4:01 p.m. today if he wouldn't have been traded for $1.3 million. That is the veteran minimum.
1.3. Okay.
So the Raiders owe Geno $18.6 million fully guaranteed this year. So no matter what happens, they owed him that amount of money.
Yep.
It has offset language like Kyler, Kirk, Tua, any of these guys, that anything the new team would pay him would come off their amount they have to pay him. And no team is in the charitable mood of doing that. So for the most part, that's what would have happened. He would have signed the veteran minimum. The Jets, from everything I've heard, got a little froggy and said, so they, at some point, whenever it happened yesterday, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, they were like, Geno's our guy. We want Geno. And Raiders are like, we're going to cut him by all the national reporters. And then the Jets start saying, another team can get in here on Geno. And we've heard other teams do want Geno. So sure, Geno says he wants to be here. We want Geno. But crazy stuff. We all thought Maxx Crosby was getting traded to Baltimore 48 hours ago. We all thought that was happening. And, well, it's not. So things happen all the time. So the Jets are like, What if the Vikings just jump into the mix, which apparently was a team that was interested in Geno? They just say, yeah, sure, you could go to the Jets or you could come to us, Kevin O'Connell, Justin Jefferson, and make an aggressive pitch over there. The Jets get nervous and they're like, you know what? Let's not play around. Call up the Raiders. Hey, Raiders, I know you're supposed to be cutting him. Let's work something out. And here's how it all worked out. The Raiders are picking Raiders. Yeah, I want to make sure I'm saying all the right teams. The Raiders are picking 20 slots earlier. The Jets sent to 6th. They're getting back a 7th. So everyone keeps the same amount of picks, but the Raiders are picking a little earlier. The Raiders are like, sweet, that's free. Sure. Okay. The Jets are giving, to the money thing that Lurch was explaining earlier, they're giving Geno a raise. And it's a slight raise. It's $1 million. So he was set to make $18.6 million no matter what this year. Now he's making $19.6. The Jets are paying him a little bit more as a sweetener. Hey, a tip of the cap to you. And he makes 3.3 overall instead of the 1.3 he would have made with the Jets. Again, he was getting his money anyway, so he just gets $1 million more than he would have gotten. And it ensured that they got their quarterback. It sort of worked out for everybody. Geno got a little bit more money than he would have gotten. The Jets make sure they get their guy, and there's no funny business here that they play around. And the Raiders, for free, moved up 20 slots in the draft, and they saved a little bit of money because, again, everything the Jets pay comes off what the Raiders pay. So they pay $16 million. So everyone sort of won there. If I answered the 75 unread text messages on my phone, the question is basically say, what the hell did we trade for this guy if we could just sign him? So hopefully I will CC the MC Show digital show. Anytime anyone asks me that question, go to the 34-minute mark at 13 seconds, and I explain it. So anywho, I've gotten that question the most, so I just wanted to get that off my chest.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. All right, Matt. Well, we'll let you go on that note. Him and I'll have at it for a while after you're gone here about all this. But as always, Matt, great to be with you. And, we'll talk to you again next week, man. I'm sure there'll be some more news. Go ahead and plug away if you'd like, Matt, on anything 100%. That's going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's free agency week, so we are loaded with content. I spoke to a handful of executives in addition to Brian Baldinger and former Eagles GM and Browns president Joe Banner on the Kenneth Walker trade and how that's going to impact Kansas City, how it elevates their offense. We broke down 8 moves that move a franchise closer to a Super Bowl that happened on the first day of tampering. And just before coming on the show with you guys today, released the moves that I thought flew under the radar, the best value signings. So come check out Between the Hash Marks. And if anybody's interested in jumping in as an annual paid subscriber, through this Friday, you buy an annual plan, we're extending it by 3 months free. So you'll get 15 months for the price of 12, and that means you won't be billed again until mini camps before the 2027 season. So come check us out. If you enjoy the NFL, if you love insider coverage, happy to have you inside the huddle Between the Hash Marks, and always fun dropping by and talking football with the boys on Wednesday morning here.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Great to see you, my friend. We'll talk to you again next week. There he is, Matt Lombardo, our NFL insider, giving us some love on all this breaking news. The big news this morning, obviously, Trey Hendrickson signing. Crazy stuff. The NFL free agency this year has been insane. We are seeing massive, massive roster turnover. Let's take a break, Boy Green. We'll come back. I want to continue this Geno discussion a little bit more. I have a few more things to say about it before everybody in the comments hates my guts because they think I'm some kind of anti-Jets guy. I'm just trying to be a realist. I think that you got to be a realist. I am going to be fascinated a little bit later this afternoon. We're going to have Jake Asman, and I don't think you and Jake are going to be on the same place, but I'll be very curious to see what Jake has to say. But we've already been talking quarterbacks for weeks with Jake, and I don't remember. My recollection is Geno wasn't too high on his list. So I'd love to see what Jake's going to roll out today in terms of his feelings about the Jets and Geno. But we'll flush out ours when we return. Today's video is brought to you by our friends at Northeast Roofing Professionals. So we'll just take a moment. We'll get a little commercial here from our friends at Northeast, and then we're back. We'll talk more about Geno and more about all this roster movement for the Jets, for the Giants, for the Bills, the New York teams. We'll plug you into what's been going on in free agency. A lot has happened in the last couple days. Be right back.
Finding the right local roofing company can be tricky. You don't want to hire the wrong roofers, or you could end up spending a fortune on repairs. The pros at Northeast Roofing Professionals can ensure your home is protected by a strong and sturdy roof. Locally owned and operated, over 30 years experience, free estimates, and competitively priced. Don't settle for an inexperienced roofing contractor. Turn to Northeast Roofing Professionals. Discounts for military and first responders. Reach out and let them put a sturdy roof over your head. NERPCNY.com. NERPCNY.com.
All right, we are back at MC Show Digital. Don't forget, pop that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. We'd love for you to do that. And memberships are available as well now. Now that we've reached over 500 subscriptions, we're over 700 now, trying to march our way towards 1,000. So if you are already a subscriber, we'd love it if you'd become a member and help support the channel in any way that you can. And our store has officially opened. It just opened on Monday. So if you want to buy some merch, like this very cool coffee mug that I'm drinking out of today, 12th MC on one side, our Manchild Show with Boy Green Digital logo on the other. Very cool. This is the 15-ounce version. I got the Whopper, the big one, because I got to have a big cup of coffee in the morning sometimes to get myself going. There's a regular size mug as well. It's 11 ounces, so you can pick either one. And we've got T-shirts, hats, and pint glasses and all kinds of cool stuff. You could go check it out. That's the link right there, the Boy Green put below us. Etsy.com/shop/MC Show Digital Shop. I know it's long, but there's a link to it right below our video here in YouTube. So if you're on at MC Show Digital, you can click right there. And I know you've even posted it in a couple other places too, Paul. So thanks for doing that as well. So as a matter of fact, somebody purchased a coffee mug just yesterday, Monday, actually, when we opened the shop. So we officially had business in our shop. So to speak. Just a nice way to support the brand. Anyway, let's go back and talk a little more about Geno. Here's where I stand on it. Number one, and it's really important to say this, and I think perspective. I always am a big believer in perspective. Really does matter when you're making your claims, when you're making your arguments. And the fact of the matter is, and we've been talking about this for weeks and weeks on end, the market for quarterbacks was small. Okay. And really,
in terms of the supply, supply was small, demand was
right. Demand pretty high, supply very small. All right. And then even the supply itself, it was, as we've talked about for weeks and weeks, a lot of guys with fleas. Kyler Murray, a guy that was once the number 1 overall pick and has this kind of unique talent. He's got a pretty good arm for a little guy. He can wing it down the field, but he's a little guy. He's got some fleas. And then he's had the attitude issues and is he dedicated to football stuff? He's got the active feet, so he can run for you. He gives you that dual threat thing. But again, it's just a mixed bag. How committed is this guy? And then also put in the blender, if you're looking at this from a Jets perspective, is there any interest in playing in New York for the New York Football Jets? That is a question that needs to be asked of every single one of these guys that was out there. You and I have talked a lot about Kirk Cousins, who is about to be released officially by the Atlanta Falcons. And, would he make any sense? But then all signs again are, number one, he's another guy with fleas, an older guy. I think he's like 37 or 38. So do you want to get into that? Is that arm that's looked a little rubbery in the last season or two, is that going to respond? He looked pretty good at the end of the season, but those were in, less meaningful games, playing because another guy was injured kind of situation. But he did seem to push the sun back up in the sky a little bit at the end of that season with the Falcons. But why didn't the Falcons keep him then? They don't obviously feel very strong about it. Maybe they see that aging process much more vividly than the rest of us do because they see this guy every single day in practice and on the football field. So we can go through them one by one, but all of these guys have fleas, including Geno Smith. The facts on Geno Smith are well spoken. I thought you really articulated that well, Paul. Rolling out the statistics, statistically, he honestly has looked pretty solid other than the interceptions. Completion percentage, as I noted, up, and that's a good thing to have. Floor, as you talked about, not a bad thing to have. He is 35 years old. I think that has to be brought to the table too, which in quarterback years is not young. It's not old. It's not Aaron Rodgers old. It's not Tom Brady old, but it's, this is where quarterbacks typically start to decline. This is where quarterbacks typically lose some of the skills. Some of those skills start to erode. As we've said for years and years, father time has no, nobody gets past father time. Father time will eat you alive every
single day. Undefeated, 100%.
So undefeated. Thank you. That's the term. Father time is undefeated. And he is. But the Jets right now are looking essentially for, at a minimum, a 1-year stopgap. Maybe it would be ideal if the Jets could have a guy that could quarterback them for 2 years, and then either this year or next year draft the apprentice, train the apprentice, and then hand the keys to the city over to the apprentice. I always think that's the ideal thing to do. We've talked about that for years. I hate the plug and play, world. Okay.
Right.
In all honesty, it appears from everything that I can see, we'll see what they do. All right. But it appears to me that after the Raiders draft their quarterback number 1, okay, Fernando, all right, that Fernando will be playing in game 1. All right. Now maybe they'll change, maybe they'll surprise me, and that won't be the case. But I think they have every intention, if they believe him to be the number 1 overall pick and to be as good as they believe him to be, to pick him number 1, that he's plug and play. And they're not great. Now, I know they're trying to improve their roster, and they had a lot of money, and they obviously made a lot of moves, but they're not great. Mm-hmm. Guy could get, dare I say, somewhat damaged, if not even ruined, by being for a team like that right out of the chute and not being the time to cultivate, to grow into the system, to work even a little bit on his body. And he's a pretty big guy, but he could still get himself more NFL ready body wise. All of these guys can when they come out of college. So, I just think there's a lot of there. So look, the bottom line for me is when I heard it yesterday, I was like, oh, that's uninspiring. But then when I've looked at Murray doesn't have any interest, doesn't seem like Cousins has any interest, and I'm like, who else is left? I mean, the Jets can't afford to be on this merry-go-round and they end up, or let's call it musical chairs. They can't afford to be playing musical chairs and be the last one standing. They have to get somebody, and they have to get somebody who at the very least is competent. So I think it is a fair thing to say today, whether you like the move or not, and personally, I'm not thrilled about it, but Geno is competent. I do believe he's a competent quarterback still, even at 35 years old. Okay. I think his recent stuff shows you that to a degree, especially if you're just willing to go back a year or two beyond last year. Last year was not a great year, but that was a really bad team he was operating around with a terrible offensive line. And as you said, some issues with offensive coordinator and what the heck he was doing there. So, so if you're willing to kind of write that one off a little bit or just put it on the sideline here, all right, and you go back and look at the 2 years prior, particularly if you're willing to go back, 3 years ago to that phenomenal year that he had with Seattle. And by the way, another thing of note is Seattle did not want him to leave. Seattle did not. They wanted to sign him. They just couldn't come to terms on the money, and he got offered a bag with the Raiders, and he
was traded.
Jump. He decided to go. Right. So that was the problem. They didn't want to get rid of him. They weren't looking to move to Sam Darnold, which is where they ended up landing. All right. They wanted to keep Geno. They believed, and they believed that Geno still had the stuff. So you got to put that in the blender as well. So all of that in the blender. And in the end, when you look at this, while I'm not inspired by it, okay, I understand it. And I also think at least the Jets are not going to be playing musical chairs and be that last person standing. Whoops, guess I lost this game. Now what? Now what do I do? So at least they're not at this point in now what world.
Yeah, just there's a lot to unpack there. But I would say, for instance, I've seen on Boomer and Gio this morning that Gio was screaming from the rooftops what an idiot franchise the Jets are for trading for Geno when they could have got him the next day. This supposed assumption, so you could just get people, and I don't think it's a Jets reputation thing, which is what Gio was saying. You just explained it beautifully in the musical chairs. The Jets couldn't afford to be last. And if you had to guarantee that you're not last by dropping 20 picks in the draft when most people don't give a flying hoot between a 6th or 7th round pick, and you have to pay $1 million more, it's technically $2 million more, but $1 million more in terms of raise to Geno, you have the 5th most cap space in the league. What the hell are we yelling about? That doesn't make any sense. So with all due respect, Gio, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't get the yelling to yell. If you have something great to say, scream it from the rooftops. So for me, on the Geno trade thing, they guaranteed they weren't last, or else the Jets would be on pins and needles until 4 o'clock today saying, wow, I really hope that Geno loves us and picks us. What if he doesn't? And then Kyler apparently doesn't want to come. Kirk Cousins doesn't want to come. Tua has picked his location. It's Atlanta. Then all of a sudden, who the hell are we getting? And I want to say this.
Paul, just to jump in for a second. They traded a 7th for a 6th, 6th for 7th, Right. I mean, they moved in a usually somewhat inconsequential place in the draft where you are literally just throwing darts 100%. And hoping That's what they did. They took a dart that was a little, they were 4 feet closer to the, 2 inches closer to the dartboard. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Then you normally stand. You can cheat here. Anybody who plays darts, you can stand 2 inches over the line and throw your next dart. And then you have to stand at the line. Literally, there's almost no difference. So for what they gave up to make sure that they locked in their guy and did not end up as the proverbial musical chair without the chair, that was fine. There's nothing to even talk about there. That's crazy. To scream from the rooftops about that is pure insanity. The
only thing that would change where I don't know if I'd be screaming at the Jets, but I would at least have a higher tone is if the Jets in this moment of panic, this moment of desperation, as they call up the Raiders and say, Raiders, we need Geno. Let's not play around. Let's do it. And then the Raiders go, they put the phone on mute. It's draft day. They're like, we could bend this team over a barrel. Unmute. Right. Yeah, I know we owe him $18.6 million guaranteed, but we're willing to pay $5 million of that. Are you willing to eat $13 million? And then the Jets are like, geez, you were just going to cut him. Now we got to pay 13. They're like, well, if you don't want him up, I think we're getting another call. And the Jets are like, okay, we'll do it. Okay, now you want to give some, bleep to the Jets for getting desperate and doing something like that. So be it. The Raiders still paid the majority of the contract. So that would have been the only thing that the Raiders could have taken advantage of the Jets were if they were in that position. And obviously they weren't had. Yep. And to go to Matt Lombardo, he brought up a lot of other names he would have preferred. And I love Matt. I love having him on the show. I respect everything he brings to the business. It's wonderful. This is a point of contention where we're going to disagree. And that's healthy. It's healthy to disagree. Tanner McKee. Who else is that? Tyson Bagent.
I know these names. It's just like, ooh.
With all Malik Willis, who he was very high on the Jets getting.
But to pay off,
thank you.
The expense of Malik Willis on top of the risk, the expense.
100%. And quite frankly, the expense on the other two. Tyson Bagent, the Bears want a 2nd-round pick. Tanner McKee, the Eagles want a 3rd-round pick. Get out of town, man. Get lost. And the reason. Again, this is where me and Matt just have different perspectives. I want the floor raised. I, with all due respect, don't give a bleep about the ceiling. Let's see what the ceiling is when we get it all together. I want floor. I want competency. I want respect. I want to get off the mat. It's a boxing match. The Jets have been pummeled to the turf, and I want them to lift their limp carcass off the canvas and get ready to have some competent football. I think Geno gives us competent football. Tanner McKee, roar. I'm channeling my inner Scooby-Doo here. Tanner McKee, Malik Willis, I don't know who any of these freaking people are. Malik Willis has 6 starts. He got $45 million guaranteed from the Dolphins. No freaking thank you. Miami, if that works out for you, God bless. You have balls of steel. If you spend $45 million guaranteed, you desperate team, and it works out for you, God bless. If it doesn't, I will laugh because no friggin' way am I paying that crazy money. No friggin' way am I giving the Bears a 2nd-round pick for Tyson Bagent. No friggin' way am I giving a 3rd-round pick to the Eagles for what? Tanner McKee started 2 games in his career. Get lost.
No, I agree.
I'm not paying some made-up magical price because you say, quarterback supply low, demand high. Sorry, prices are different. We're on an Uber. Oh, you're leaving a Jets game. Yeah, normally I'd only charge you $5, but I'm charging you $5 million. Screw you. Hell no. I wanted floor play, and I think that's what Geno gives us, and it's dirt cheap. And we go through all your other names again. Kyler didn't want to be here. Kirk didn't want to be here. Tua.
Yeah.
Can't play in cold weather. Gets injured all the time.
Right.
I think Geno, to me, it also believes this on Geno. How much do you think he has learned? Has he gotten more mature? He arrived at the Jets as a 23-year-old. He's a 35-year-old man now. How different is he? He says he's very different.
It is just to jump in for a second, it is a really cool full circle moment. So there is potentially a cool story that this ends up if he has some success with the Jets. Right. It's kind of cool that they drafted him, and now he comes back home, and we know how he left with the horrible punching incident, which wasn't his fault, by the way. But that whole just stigma of it all. He goes and rebuilds himself, and then he comes full circle and comes back to the team that believed in him the first time around. So I think that's really kind of neat about that. That makes it really, really interesting. And I think the one thing he will give the Jets, and I don't know what he's going to give them in terms of wins and losses. That's going to depend on the roster and a lot of other things. Can this head coach, so on and so forth. But the one thing that he will give them is professionalism. He is going to show up ready to go. He's going to show up to camp in shape. He knows he's the starter. There's no debate who the starter is. So the good thing is a lot of these other teams that were looking at him, they were looking at him potentially as like a stopgap guy, like, for Jones, who might not be back in time, for the start of the season. The situation in Minnesota, of course, and, what are they doing there with J.J. McCarthy? And, so some of the teams that were peeking at him, dare I say, or were showing, quote, interest and maybe could have stolen him away if he had made it out to clean free agency and was released by the Raiders, they seem to be looking at him more as kind of a plug-in and might not even be a full season. I think the Jets will pretty much be committed to him for an entire season. So he gets another season here to kind of say, I still got it. I still can do this. So that's kind of cool too. So I would have hoped that if he had gotten a free agency, he would have saw that and saw the opportunity for a full circle moment and said, I'm going to come there. But I can understand, say, the temptation of something like, the Vikings, who have a really good roster and a really good coach.
Yeah. By the way, let's just address this real quick, because I figured someone would respond when you said it, Manchild, that it wasn't Gino's fault for the jaw getting broken. We're going to give a very fast-forwarded version of the story.
Take me back. So a long time ago, I vaguely 2015. I remember they suspended the player who was a very unknown guy. He had like a weird
IK NM Kampali.
There you go. I can't remember his name, but I knew he had the weird initials.
Yes.
And they suspended the player. So it was Gino at fault? What was the story? Tell me.
It's up to interpretation, I suppose. But
here's what happened in the locker room, or whatever.
It did. It happened in the locker room in 2015. Gino Smith participated in some level of a charity event. Either he was hosting it or IK was hosting it. One of the two.
Okay.
And Gino flew to this camp, or IK flew to Gino's camp, either way. And it was established that there was like a $500 airfare ticket that was going to be paid up. Gino owed that to either IK in terms of like they paid for it and then they were going to switch it back or something of that nature. And $500 apparently was on the line.
$500, huh?
This is unbelievable.
Crazy.
Okay? $500 was on the line.
Wow.
And for some reason, Gino was dragging his feet on paying this $500. So again, to Dirt M. Gertz saying he didn't pay his debt. Now, in real life, outside of a mafia movie, if I don't pay $500, someone's not going to come up and beat the bleep out of me.
Brass knuckles and beat you.
Yeah, and sucker punch me in the locker room because I didn't give you your $500. Now, was Gino somewhat immature? Dude, you're making millions of dollars. Stop goofing around. Pay the $500 to this relative. IK is a relatively no-name player who's not making anywhere near the money a 39th overall pick, multi-millionaire kid is. So he should have just did it. He didn't. So, yeah, if you want to blame him for not getting the $500 more efficiently to IK, then sure. But he shouldn't have been sucker punched in the locker room. And quite frankly, the thing that stinks now is that follows him. I was listening to Rich Eisen show. I randomly, algorithm right on I'm on Instagram, and I see Rich has a take on the Gino return. I'm like, all right, let me see what Rich had to say about all this. And he's cracking jokes about the jaw thing, that he should probably wear a red no contact jersey in the locker room just in case he gets hit. And I laughed and went like, come on, man. So I understand. Gino knows that these jokes are going to come. Gino knows that these naysayers, I transcribed his interview he did with Josina yesterday. He said, there's going to be people that don't like this move. I know it straight up. And he says, the people that believe we're going to ride and I'm going to go win you a bunch of games. And for the people that don't believe, take a seat and watch. And I love the confidence that he has. So to me, if you want to blame Gino for that, so be it. He should have, again, I could say he should have obviously paid the money. It was inconsequential, the money to him. He had made unbelievable money. And it's a silly, immature mistake when he was a young kid. And it changed his life forever. Now, he eventually got back on his own feet. He comeback player of the year in 2022 with Seattle. And good for him to stick it out. He ended Eli Manning's Iron Man streak. He started in place of Eli Manning with the Giants. And he was a backup for Eli. He was a backup for Phillip Rivers. He was a backup with Russell Wilson until he got his shot. So it's been a wild journey. Gino referenced it several times as a movie script, full circle moment to have the chance to, as he says in his words, right the wrongs. He said, this is a part of my career that while a lot on the outside says, wow, that must have sucked. He says in his office, he has all these pictures of him being drafted and holding up the Jets jersey. He said he cherishes those moments. The Jets gave me my chance. They gave me my opportunity and I want to go back and pay it back. So to me, it would be an amazing story.
That resurgence came out of nowhere. And when it started to happen, I was like, what? Geno Smith, he's still around? Like, I didn't even know he was playing almost. He was just become that obscure, just living in the backup quarterback world where these guys, if they're not, if guys aren't getting hurt on the teams they're on, you barely hear from them at all. Only the hometown fans know about them, as you said, and he went a bunch of different places, so you're not hearing anything back here in New York. So when that story started to bubble, I was like, wow, this is impressive. I started to perk up and watch. So as a fan, I 1,000% will be rooting for Geno in the Jets jersey. I mean, like I said, it would be the coolest, full circle moment ever, and I suppose now looking at the landscape of what was out there and who was even willing to engage the Jets, they were getting at this point, this late in the game, believe it or not, to a situation where they could have ended up with nobody. Or a really, really like not a first choice, not a second choice, not a third choice, but like our seventh choice. Yikes. I mean, you don't want that at starting quarterback. So if the Jets still believe that he's got something left in the tank here and he will be professional, and I do believe he will be competent. But I think the greater question here, and we'll raise it when we talk to Jake Asman in a little bit, is the coach going to lead them to victory too? I mean, it's that quarterback coach thing, right? You need the good head coach and the good offensive coordinator to help the quarterback be successful in a lot of ways. And then obviously you got to put some talent around the guy. So we'll see. We'll see where this all goes. The Jets still have money to spend. They've made a lot of moves. We're not going to have enough time to break it down today, unfortunately, but we've got plenty more shows coming our way. I mean, the Jets have added a lot of talent to their roster. They've lost a few guys too, like most teams have, by the way, including my Giants. But they certainly have been adding, and they're going to look very different on the field than they looked this past year. Now, does that equate to more wins? Well, we're going to find that out. Can this coach these guys? We're going to find out. But they are definitely it is a makeover right now for the Jets. And it's going to be fascinating to see when this roster is fully constructed and then what it can do. And obviously, one of the big things is they have the draft where they're going to have 4 extremely meaningful picks where if they choose wisely, you might have 4 more players, in starting positions on this year's team. It's crazy.
100%, which I would assume are 4 starters. By the way, real quick, I see Mad Mertz asking, isn't today the day when free agency starts for real? Yes. So we're in the middle of the legal tampering period right now. At 4:00, that's when things become official. So for Jet fans, the Jermaine Johnson trade will be announced. The Geno Smith trade will be announced as people are passing physicals and stuff, which apparently isn't always a guarantee. So all of signings, trades, all of that stuff at 4:00, you are going to get set your phone accordingly. It's going to blow up if you follow your team's pages because it's just transaction after transaction after transaction. Like for the Jets, they've signed like 10 guys. That's 10 things that all have to be official. Right. So yes, it is at 4:00. And just one, again, we don't have a lot of time much because we have to go to Jake here shortly, but I just have a bone to pick with you. Your Giants are a bunch of cheap bastards. Because
our organization has always been cheap, by the way. Going all the way back to the history, we have always been cheap bastards. Go ahead.
So from everything I had heard, all the days are blended together now, but it was a night, and I heard, oh boy, the New York Giants about to sign Elijah Vera Tucker. All signs are pointing in that direction. It looks good. The last hurdle, according to Connor Hughes of SNY, this is like as the negotiations are going on in the building, the last piece of the puzzle is they just want to hammer out length of deal. And they're going back and forth on length. Like, it's going to be 3 years. It's going to be 4 years. What is it going to be? And they're going back and forth. And it seemed like AVT wanted the shorter deal because that means he could get back to free agency and dip his toes back in the water. It makes a lot of sense. So the Giants, that was the hole in the plan. Length. And apparently,
so the Giants wanted to hold out for a longer-term deal, huh? Wow.
Yes,
that's interesting because he's such a risk. I would think, if I were in a front office in the NFL and he was a player I was looking at potentially to sign a free agency, that I'd be way more comfortable with the shorter deal and giving him more money because if things do go south from an injury perspective, has he shown a penchant for getting injured and has had some serious injuries, then at least I know, all right, and I'm 2 years and I'm out of this. 2 years and an option or something, and I'm out. You just figure out a way to script that contract contract where you pay him well right now in hopes that he is going to flip the switch and become healthy. And then you can inevitably, extend him later down the road.
Yeah, I imagine part of it from a Giants perspective, and now we're just sort of trying to connect dots, is if the Giants got him at an affordable price, relatively speaking, and they believe he's going to stay healthy, then the longer-term deal, we keep him at a better price for longer, as opposed to the 3 years, and he looks really healthy, and you got to pay him back again. So anywho, that length is apparently the holdup in the deal, and then it's an impasse. The ABT's camp is here, the Giants are here, and there's nothing to make up. So they part company. They're like, all right, well, fine, so be it. And then the Patriots swoop in and sign him on a 3-year deal for $43 million, and they bang it out. He gets a deal he wants. There is a lot of other stuff with the deal. We'll have to get into that later where we have more time. But thank you for being cheap bastards, Lurch. I was fine if ABT became a Giant. As a matter of fact, I advocated for it on the show. We had a free agency show like on Monday or something, or whatever the hell it was. And I said, hey, my gut tells me ABT is going to be a Giant or a Raider. And in my own head, I don't care. Like, we have our preseason thing every year. Every 4 years we play, and I hate your Giants and you hate my Jets for that game. And then that's it. I don't care. I care nothing. Good for you that you guys have Harbaugh. Don't care. So if ABT would have went to the Giants, so what? I'm cool. Inside the division, the Patriots?
Sounds like we might have cheaped out a little too in that whole Trent McDuffie thing that we're finding out about.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The Giants were right there. And so why didn't they try to push that across the finish line and be a little more aggressive in terms of what they were willing to do to get a player of that quality? I mean, and now, especially since they've lost Cordell Flott, not that he's not a huge loss, but the problem is they don't have any depth there at all.
Right.
So now they really have to figure something out, and I know they've, gotten some tertiary guys, but I don't think any of those guys are serious starters. They need a starting corner and they need a starting slot corner, so they're down essentially 2 corners right now. They need to change that, and that's not going to be easy. And they could have had a front line guy, so would it have been worth it, to make that deal and to just not, let him slip through their fingers and end up, with someone else. But, this is the whole thing about negotiating, and when multiple teams are in and the competition, and, you draw a line in the sand somewhere and you hope that your line is the good one, and not the bad one. Right. So that line, I guess, was a little bit short, but there's still so much time, and the draft is still in front of us, about a month away now. So a little more than a month. So there's a lot of things that can still happen. And I think a lot of the better bargains might be out there now in the upcoming, weeks, the guys that now, oh, well, we're full here. Oh, now where am I going to go? And suddenly those free agents don't have as many options. And usually you can broker better deals when you have guys that don't have a feeding frenzy chasing after them. Now there's only 1 or 2 teams. I don't want to go there. I don't want to live there, whatever the reason a player might or might not want to go to a team. And then, well, we're your only option here. It's like Kevin O'Leary on Shark Tank. I'm the only one left.
Mr. Wonderful.
Come to Papa, Mr. Wonderful. Take the deal with the.
I just want royalties until you're dead.
Right. Just keep paying me for the rest of your
life.
Keep
the equity. I just want the royalty at 2.5%.
I don't see anybody else here that's in. I'm the only one that's in. He loves to do that. He loves to be the last one at the table to just basically say, "Listen, are you going to walk out of Shark Tank without a deal, or are you going to take my, very bad deal,
dastardly,
dastardly deal here because it's the only one left." So, sometimes you can play that game as free agency moves on, but usually in the early stages of free agency, when it's a feeding frenzy, players are going to have options and teams are going to have to make their best offer and decide where they're willing to draw that line in the sand.
Lurch, give a plug. We've got 400 people in the room right now, so a lot of opportunities to build up the brand of the Manchild Show at Boyd Green Digital. So please, take it.
Yeah. So first of all, if you're not already a subscriber, go to that link right there, youtube.com/@MCShowDigital. I know we always put out our live shows on a number of portals through our social media as well. So you got to go to the YouTube channel itself. That's where you hit the subscribe button and become part of our growing army. If you are already a subscriber, you see the scrolling ticker below. We have membership available. Now you can support the channel in a whole different way. And as I mentioned earlier, our store is now open. You can actually buy Manchild Show with Boyd Green merch. I showed the coffee mug. I'll show that one more time. This is a nice 15-ounce coffee mug. They come in all colors. This one's navy blue two-tone, but you can get it in yellow and green.
I like that first logo.
Black.
That pops really nicely on that.
Yeah,
that one really
is awesome. That's our VIP club. That's our membership club. It's called the 12th Manchild, and yeah, that logo looks awesome on the white
100%.
mug. Very, very cool. And I do. This is not the official hat. Boy Green has the official hat, but it has the right logo. This is a 12th MC hat. This exact hat is not the one that's for sale because Boy Green hates these adjustable, as he calls them, buckle hats. I love the buckle hats. I'm just an old man, I guess, that likes those buckle hats. So Boy Green has the flex fit hat. I promised him I would get a flex fit hat, and there it is. Look at that baby. That thing is nice. Beautiful flex fit hat. All right, completely closed in the back, so no sun peeking through the back of there. All right, and there's a couple of sizes in that, so that's pretty cool. So again, our store is open. We're not making tons of money off of our store at all. It's more about you guys helping promote the brand. So if you have some extra cash and you want to go over there and support the channel that way, you can do that as well. All right, so there you go. Wow. Like I said, we have a very, very busy week this week. We're going to be talking to all of our insiders, Jets, Giants, and Bills. Ed Valentine from Big Blue View is back. We will do a full breakdown of everything the Giants have done. I think we're interviewing Ed tomorrow, right?
Correct. Tomorrow, 10 a.m.
So tomorrow morning. So we'll get that out to you, by noon at the latest, probably tomorrow. And we will break down every move up to that point that the Giants have made. All these things will be official by tomorrow. So it'll be good to talk to Ed tomorrow. We'll have Anthony Prohaska from the Bills to break down all the moves that the Bills made. And as we mentioned, Jake Asman, literally after we get off the air with you guys in just a couple minutes, Jake Asman will be joining us to break down the Geno Smith thing. And I really want to talk to Jake about all these other signings with the Jets, because the Jets have been busy and have signed a lot of players. They are obviously trying to rebuild that defense. And trying to shore up a couple of other spots. And I think what's fascinating with the Jets, especially since they have 4 picks in the top 50 right now, unless they trade and do more things, but they have 4 picks in the top 50 of this year's draft that could be 4 starting players. What they do in free agency and what positions they're able to secure by spending some of that money, that boatload of money that they have, is really, really going to help also dictate their draft strategy. Who is going to be that number 2 overall pick in the draft if they stay in that spot? Who else will they pick in the first round? Now with Geno in the fold, are they legitimately going to get into quarterback sweepstakes in the early rounds here? Or are they just going to do the old, maybe we'll just take a flyer in the 3rd or 4th round and see how that all goes and focus on next year being potentially quarterback year for us? So there's a lot of little things that are happening right now, particularly with this Jets roster, that will determine what direction they go with this multitude of picks that they have in the first 2 rounds of this year's NFL draft. So whether you believe or don't believe in Aaron Glenn or whatever, the Jets right now are a fascinating, fascinating project. Okay, because there's just all these pieces, and it's so delectable and delicious to have them all out there as potentially, roster changing things. Will it end up being that? We'll see, but they have the potential. And by the way, they'll do it all over again next year because they have a plethora of picks again next year. So they're going to get, 3 more primo picks next year. And by the way,
4 more actually.
4, is it 4? How many do they have in
there's 3 first-round picks and a 2nd-round pick. So those are all top 50 picks.
Right. So 4 more consequential picks. That's 8 draft picks. Okay, consequential draft picks in the first 2 rounds for the Jets in the next 2 seasons. That is roster altering. I mean, that is like, take me back to the Herschel Walker days, when the Cowboys, traded the Cowboys traded away Herschel Walker and got a plethora of draft picks who they turned into Emmitt Smith and all these other great players and literally put them into a dynasty situation where they won multiple championships. So, that's pie in the sky. I know. Take it easy. I know. This is the Jets. But it is fascinating these days to be a Jets fan and to be in that position. Very, very fascinating.
So, long story short, guys, we have a ton of content coming today. Again, later today for our Survivor fans, the non-sports fans in the audience. It's a Wednesday night, so we'll have the latest episode recap of Survivor, 90-minute episode. So we come on shortly after.
Survivor
so
Day.
9:35, 9:40, we'll be jumping on recapping the latest episode of Survivor. That's really my only dip outside of the world of sports that happens on any of my channels. So feel free, folks, to jump on. It's a CBS reality show, also on Paramount Plus. So again, ton of Jets. We'll have Jake Asman interview coming out in just a little bit, but also Survivor tonight. So, Lurch, going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So the tiki torches will be burning as they are here.
Right? There they are. Yeah.
A little cool template for Survivor. So you get a little peek at that, but we'll be back at it. Ambient lighting, the whole 9 yards. Brett LaBelle will be back with us. It's been an exciting season so far. Only 2 episodes in the books. It's been a lot of fun. Luke, our intern, Luke Baker, who does a lot of outside work for the show, including particularly with the show Survivor, produced a minute short that is now on our YouTube channel. Go check it out if you're a Survivor fan. It is about the musings of Coach, Coach Wade, Coachisms as they're called, and it was a really clever short that he put together off of our discussion in last Wednesday night's show. So we'll be back at it again tonight, but that was really cool and funny and neat. So if you haven't checked it out and you are a Survivor fan, just go into our shorts, again, youtube.com/@MC Show Digital, and just go to shorts, and it's like the first or second one. It's right near the top of the list, and go listen to the Coachisms short. It was really, really cool short, funny, and very, very well put together with some clips from the show. So Luke does a phenomenal job. I want to thank him. He put together our Survivor Open as well, which Brett LaBelle, who joined us for the first time in the last episode, was commenting about, look at this cool Open. We kind of like come flying out of a volcano. It's pretty cool. So again, all of that coming tonight at right around 9:35, 9:40. So as soon as the show ends, which is an hour and a half, starts at 8, ends at 9:30, we get our ducks in a row. Brett jumps in with us, and then by 9:40, 9:45, the latest, we're on the air talking Survivor. We usually do about an hour. You can get in the comments. You can have some fun with us. So just keep that in mind on Wednesday nights and Wednesday nights only. So, all right. Yeah. So, all right. Jake Asman coming up. Can't wait to hear Jake and Boy Green go at it here on the Geno Smith thing. I think this is going to be a battle. This is going to be a war, and I will be, just put me in the middle, Boy Green. I just want to be right in the center.
Will do.
It's like, okay. Which way do I pivot? That's going to be a fascinating discussion. So for all you Jet nuts, definitely that's coming your way. And then, like I said, Ed Valentine, Anthony Prohaska on Giants and Bills. And we will, of course, be on top for all the local listeners here in Central New York and the Syracuse area. We will be all over the story. I mentioned at the very top of the show. I'll just mention it one more time before we go out now. The head coach of Syracuse basketball, Adrian Autry, unfortunately has been fired. 3 seasons at the helm, but 3 seasons where Syracuse has not been able to get to the NCAA tournament. And now Syracuse in a major drought as a basketball program. It's been 5 straight years since they have not even made the field of 68. So that was enough to warrant the people that are now in power to make a move. And obviously there'll be a very quick search, and I think a solution to this hopefully very, very quickly, because the transfer portal and all these things that go on now in college sports get rolling right after the national championship game happens, which is April 6th. So you better be ready to go, feet on the ground, by April 7th. So today's March 11th. I mean, Syracuse literally has less than a month to get all their pieces in place to be ready to hit the ground running as soon as the portal opens and they can start doing roster building. Plus, you got to try to hold on to the guys that can still stay in your program. So the sooner you have a foot soldier here manning the ship, the less likely the ship starts to leak, dare I say, and water's squirting all over the place, meaning players are leaving for other places, because that transfer portal is a very appetizing thing. So we'll get into all of that. We're going to have a couple of insiders on that, but we'll have our usual talk with Neil Adler, and I'm working on a second guest. I don't want to make it official yet until we get them locked down, but we'll probably have 2 guests towards the back end of this week on this whole Syracuse situation, which obviously is breaking as we speak. All right. Well, that'll do it for Boy Green and myself here on a Wednesday live show. Thank every one of you for joining us in the room. Again, if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. We'd love for you to be part of our growing family, and we will be back at it all week long. Just hit the notifications so you know when we're putting out content. A lot of content coming your way in the next 3 days. Take care, everybody. Peace out.